Okay, this video is on how to use a Hanau alcohol torch that we use for a lot of indenture work for smoothing out wax. It's also used for heating up impression compound. Gets a lot of use in a dental lab, particularly in a removable dental lab. So the way this works is that there's alcohol that fills in the top half here, and there's air in the bottom. The wick comes up here, okay, and hangs down in the alcohol. And you light the wick. You can use your Bunsen burner to light it also. Turn that out so you can see it a little better, like that. And then when you pump air into the bottle, it blows the wick sideways. And I can let go and I still got a sideways flame for a few seconds, 5 seconds or so. And I can kind of keep pumping it and pump some air in, and I get a nice pinpoint sideways flame off of that. And from that I can use that to smooth out my wax. And that's mainly what it's used for. So I blow that out. Okay, so how to use this: basically it burns denatured ethanol, ethanol, not methanol, and it's marked no methanol on this. Methanol will not burn properly. This is where you fill it. Okay, so if your torch hasn't been used, or if it's dry, take that cap off, take your alcohol, squirt it in here until the level comes up to about here. We don't fill it. Do not fill it with alcohol. Okay, we just need enough so that the wick is hanging down in the alcohol. And here's the wick. Okay, and starts out a little longer than that. Okay, it can be adjusted up and down here in the metal part by pulling the wick up or pushing it up or pulling it down. And the height of that is fairly critical. Okay, but the idea is that your alcohol goes in here. As long as it's up to the wick, then it's going to soak it up. You don't fill the torch with alcohol. Okay, the height of that wick should be such that the flame can blow across the top of it. Okay, some of this particular part here is up a little higher than others, but the idea is that it can blow across there. If you have your wick sticking way up to here, then all you're doing is blowing air right straight into the wick, and you don't get the pinpoint flame because the wick is blocking it off. It's in its way. So then you got to pull the wick down. Okay, if you've let this burn down a lot and it's all the way down to the bottom, sometimes it won't flame high enough up, and then your air can't blow across, so you got to pull the wick up. So adjusting that wick is something that you do quite a bit. Now, if you've done that and you're pumping it and you don't get a sideways flame, there's a few things that you look for. Number one is this nut. This should be tight, okay, allowing it no air to come in. That'll allow it to have pressure built up in here and come over and blow it out that way. So the first thing you do is check and make sure that's tight. I always keep that tight. Okay. Secondly, there's a screw in the bottom of this that holds the bottom on and seals off this chamber that holds the air, and it pressurizes it. And the bottom of it without a plate on looks like this. And there's actually a little ball and a spring in there that makes it a valve so that it builds up pressure inside of here. So you have to tighten. If this is loose, it'll let air out. That screw has also got a gasket on it. It takes a TS 15 Torx safety screwdriver, okay? Because there's a little pin in the bottom of that. So that's got to go up in there, and you tighten it and you check it to make sure that that's tight. Okay, that's number two. Number three, if it still doesn't blow a flame, it'll be because this tip is plugged up with compound or with just carbon that's been built up over time. And that has to be just replaced then. Okay, if you happen to get wax in it, you might be able to blow the steamer in to unscrew this off of there and steam it out. But most of the time we wind up just having to replace that tip. So if you're not getting a flame going across here, number one, check here. Number two, check that. Number three, replace the tip. If none of that works, you're probably still leaking air down here, and I take a hot glue gun and I seal this off with hot glue. Then try it. Okay? So when you're using it, basically you're keeping it lit here. Generally, if I'm not using it in my hand, it's not lit. Whenever I want to use it, I just light it with my Bunsen burner that's always going, use it. Don't tip it too much. You can tip it a little, but not a lot. You don't want alcohol to be leaking out. A lot of times we lose the gasket here, we lose the gasket there, and then it doesn't seal. And the alcohol, you tip it and the alcohol drips out, and it drips on your fingers and it's on fire and you get burned pretty bad. So don't tip it very much. Generally keep it level, take your work and move it. Tip your work so that you're not tipping the alcohol torch. When you're done, blow the flame out, put the cap on so the alcohol doesn't evaporate out before the next time you use it, a day or two or a week later. If you don't put the cap on, you're going to come back and it's all going to be dry and you got to fill it up again. When you are using it, you put it over here so it's not dangling in your way. Okay, so that's how you use a Hanau alcohol torch.